It's Justin and Andy, the special episode we've been previewing of The Making of a Marketer, and we are super happy to have you today, Jess. And big thank you, Jess, for coming up with this idea. So it is our first roundtable that we're bringing to the table, if you will, on The Making of a Marketer, and a topic that I know that you are very big on, being a mother and someone that is thinking about the craft that you and I talk about, utilizing screen time, utilizing LinkedIn, doing social media correctly. But how are we advising this now to our youth? So I'm happy to be on a fly on the wall with some experts in the room today, Jess, but curious what you're looking for today as we enter a new realm of The Making of a Marketer.
I'm absolutely so excited and pumped to be here, and so excited for our roundtable guests because they cover so many facets across many disciplines and are experts in this space. We have parents, we have non-parents, and I think we're going to have a really incredible conversation. So thank you all for joining and being here with us. We are ready to learn and to explore and to share perspectives on digital health. I mean, what a topic. It doesn't matter. I think when we were thinking about this roundtable concept, it doesn't matter if you are a parent or not a parent. This is very relevant to the space and environment that we are living in these days. And I feel like digital health and the use of social media is on everyone's mind. So a very timely and relevant topic.
And for someone like me, like I like to joke that I have 3 cats. I'm here to be learning, like what does my future entail when the kids pop up, but also something that Jess and I think can take for granted sometimes is being in the world of digital marketing that we are every day. We do probably create healthy boundaries for ourselves because we're in it all the time. We know what to look for. We know what to do a little bit more. So now let's turn this over to the experts and just start right away. So we're going to poll our different audience members here and then also reflect based on your answers. So you have the podcast you're looking at right now. If you have the description up, whether it be on our live video feed or you have it up on a Spotify or Apple, you'll see the list of our guests and links to their titles where you can find them. We're not going to go super in depth on that today, so be sure to check out their individual stories yourselves. We will start with Rob here. And Rob, I'm going to pop a question over to you, and I want you to kick us off with telling us first your background, kind of how screen time, children's screen time, how this relates to you, and then lead into the question. So our first question leading Rob in here today is, how did you make your decision about screen rules in your home, broadly speaking?
Well, briefly, my background is in psychology, and I'm also a Zen teacher and have been applying my psychological training in the executive coaching space and leadership development space, and former professor of adult development. And so that's just a little bit about my background. And I would say, it's been a fumbling into a gnarly problem. I've got an 8-year-old and an 11-year-old, just 2 boys. And my wife and I are kind of figuring out as we go, like many of us. But the old school assumption was these platforms and technologies are actually for us to connect, to stay in touch, and to network, and to share our work in the world. And that's all still true in some ways, but there's this backdrop of, actually it's not for us. Somebody else is benefiting from profiling us and gathering data on us, and then this whole attention capture as an invasive thing to our psyches has been something I've just been acclimating to. And then of course, having kids the past 10 years or so, it's been like, oh, I need to really educate my kids on just how much science is inside of what is put on a screen and how to keep eyeballs on screen and how to keep taps and interactions going. And so, I would say that we've been fumbling our way forward, my wife and I, in terms of how do we create norms and standards. But a lot of my attention with my kids is not so much don't use it, but being right next to them and being like, what is this thing trying to get you to do? And getting them to reflect and get insight into how are they doing that? What are they doing? So it doesn't matter if they're on a tablet or we're watching something on TV and the commercials are going. I've created a practice where I'm constantly asking, okay, how is this one trying to get your attention and energy? And what really matters to you right now? And does it even make sense? At any rate. So that would be kind of an opening statement.
So, Jess, let's pass this back to the group. Just any early thoughts, because you will start to see an evolution as how our thoughts come together in this journey. But just early thoughts, just general broad screen usage when it comes to your children.
I really appreciate Rob's question there that he asks of what is this trying to make us do? And I've had a conversation, I have a 3 and a 5-year-old, and I've had the conversation with the 5-year-old of explaining like, hey, I don't want to be on my phone as much as I am, but it actually is fighting me. Like my phone is actively fighting me. When I try to put it down, it is actively working to not let me do that. And not to try to say, it's not my fault, girls, but more just being clear, kind of what Rob is pointing towards of like, there is a desire to keep our attention. And so wanting to just be honest about that is like, hey, it's not no screens, but it's realizing that the screens have an intention in them, built in on purpose. And so just trying to be honest about that, and hopefully that conversation can continue. So I appreciate what you brought into the space, Rob. And I feel like the similar question that we're asking of how to be honest about all of the players in the room. It's not just do this or don't do that, but there are other entities, perhaps.
Yeah, I love that you're making it into a conversation, and just I think having that question out there like is good for adults too, and like being aware of like Rob's or like Kirk said, just like the struggle is real for adults. So imagine how real it is for children. And like I think we just need to like constantly remind ourselves that like this is designed to fully capture your attention, and it's something that we need to be really careful exposing kids to, but also just developing that mental process of like, oh, I've been on this for 20 minutes and I don't even know where the last 20 minutes went. and having them think about it in an introspective kind of way is really good.
Yeah.
I was really vibing with that question, Rob, you were asking, about, hey, just bringing awareness to like, what is this doing and why? Like, why is such a powerful question if you ask that over and over again. And I really liked, and I'm just speaking from my experience as a co-parent of one daughter. So everybody's experience is going to be different. But when you said how you're next to them, I think that's so crucial to the way that we've decided to make decisions in a number of things, that you have to kind of make these choices about restriction or access, and the opportunity not to do it from a place of loneliness or just giving it all to the child. And that's, in our case, that was TV generally, certainly commercials in between the shows that we're wanting to watch are some of the worst things, but the screen time for social media and all sorts of different things, food and sugar and all these things that aren't good or bad, but they can certainly have consequences, especially early on while the cement is sort of drying in terms of a kiddo's life. Again, I don't have any of the right answers per se, but I did really appreciate that comment about being next to them and being inquisitive.
So
Yeah,
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Also related strongly to that, and think it's such a wise question, and it has a broad range. It's not just about screens. That's what you want your children or us as adults to be asking about anything we're encountering. But I think it's also useful. I know this with my own children. I do something similar, but they'll ask me the same thing if they see me on something on my phone. And what is that trying to get you to do? And then like, oh yeah, makes me aware of my own habits and things that I'm doing, because they are paying a lot of attention to us. And so I think it's just a really wise question. And then sitting alongside really gives you that perspective of what they're seeing too. And so it keeps that conversation open. And I think that's one of the most important parts.
So as a non-parent, I have this really, I think, terrifying ability to not be mindful of what I do. I don't have to worry about who I'm being a role model to necessarily. And, but luckily, I was exposed to this book, Digital Minimalism, a while back. And I really liked what Cal Newport said about being mindful about what we're using these tools for. And then asking ourselves, is there sort of a non-digital way to do it better? So if you're going to go on Facebook, for example, to connect with other people, is there a way to connect with others in a better or more effective way? And so I think that I've used that as sort of a filter as I decide what media I engage with. And then I also ask myself, is this adding value? And if the answer is no, then I have to, encourage myself to try something different. So I think that those have been sort of the bumpers on my use. What am I trying to do with this? Could I do it better in some other way? And is this adding value?
Perfect segue for Annie. Annie, you work with a lot of families. Tell us a little bit more about that and at Screen Sanity. And we'd love to know, just based on what you've seen working with families and kids, is there a small screen rule that like minimal viable screen rule that you find effective at lowering conflict at home? And how could you get someone that's skeptical to jump in and kind of lower their barrier?
Absolutely. These are such great questions. And I love the conversation that was happening before this about how starting with yourself as an example, that's actually we have 5 key principles of digital health that are embedded throughout our trainings and our resources at Screen Sanity. And the first one is start with yourself. What examples can you model, and what can you display with your own tech use, and how your kids or the kids in your life are learning from that. For the one minimum screen rule or tip that I would say, one of our second principles is device-free zones. We call it tables and bedtimes. But implementing any space, if it's physical, within your day-to-day routine, or just bound to a certain time, like your dinner table or your meal tables or bedtimes, and getting devices out of those zones to create spaces where there is meaningful connection face-to-face, and you're removing the distractions and the digital interruptions that can happen with screens, really carving and protecting those out in routine ways so that they're happening day to day, just like brushing your teeth or your hair or your bedtime routine. Building those in so they're predictable can limit the screen time is found to be the #1 battleground in homes today. And this can really putting it into those ways where it's predictable and expected can help remove those battles and the conflicts between family members. And then as to how I would help a skeptical person implement it today, I think I would ask them to try it once and see what the benefit, what they see just from one time. Also introducing it with their family in a way that's, hey, trying this out, but not necessarily going to be, we're going to implement this now forever and always. But seeing it once, seeing how it goes, and then latching onto the positive spaces that then you can like kind of build momentum from there.
So as we open it up to the group, one thing that I stuck on with Annie right there is that this is actually something my medical doctor recommended because I wasn't sleeping well at night, Jess. I don't know if you were with me during that era of the podcast, but I think you might have been, where I was like, I can just not sleep at night. And like, we went through like a checklist of everything. Like, she was like, hey, Andy, are you monitoring, when you're not looking at your phone? Now, that was part of it, like cutting it off at a certain time. It actually was mainly a sensitivity to coffee. So I can't attribute all of it to the phone. But however, with eliminating some of the phone use right before bed, just that actually improved my sleep a lot. So I can actually say there's some proof in the pudding from my side. But curious thoughts on implementing these style of boundaries and if that has worked for anybody else.
Yeah, definitely. I try not to use my phone kind of for the first hour, the hour before I go to bed and the hour when I wake up, because I know in the morning it can also have a big impact for just waking up and immediately flooding yourself with all the opinions of everyone on the internet and how like depressing and awful a way to start the day that is. But to piggyback off of what Annie said, you said it's like the biggest battleground in homes today. And I think it's a huge battleground in schools too. And something positive that we've been seeing is that more and more states, it starts on a district level, but now even some states are saying that we need to ban phones from classrooms. And that's been just a huge relief for people who work in education because they don't have to have those battles every day. And I think, that if parents know that at least their kid isn't getting it during the day, like that also factors into home life and just curbing some of that use by tackling it on a bigger level. And then kids know what to expect and they know that at school it needs to be in their locker or they need to give it up at the start of the day. And so I'm just cheering that effort on to keep phones out of schools, frankly. I mean, maybe I should have like a more neutral take on it, but I think it's a really good thing.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. To add to that, because I just saw, and I was cheering it on too, but I was conflicting. Denmark, they're trying to pass the banning of social until age 13. I absolutely love that, but then at the same time, I'm thinking I work in social. Like we want everyone on social. We want everyone on LinkedIn. So, but I'm happy. I'm cheering for that. And then Sweden banning the phones in the schools. And I was really happy to see that too.
I almost think of this through almost an e-commerce lens. It almost saves me from accidentally leaving my phone on and like my kid getting targeted with an ad and then purchasing something when they're 10 by accident. Because I read these stories about like Amazon purchases of like 5K that they didn't know about, but whole other story there. Debbie, I want to bring you in now. We got a question for you. We're going to cue this up. So let's talk about breakaway techniques. Is there a way that a kid can use when reaching maybe tech overload and how parents can model so kids start to copy it? And, I think maybe from all of us, just gauging on our age ranges, like for me, that might have been telling me to stop playing Super Nintendo, for too long. So it's like, obviously it's a very different technique and we're all kind of learning as we go. So I'm curious kind of your thoughts on what coping could be potentially when there is a bit of an overload situation.
Yeah, and this relates back to what Annie mentioned. It starts with the adult first, managing yourself and modeling when you need to take a break. So kind of saying out loud, oh, I know, I just realized I've been on my phone for way too long and got distracted, and I'm going to go put it over here and go get a drink of water and engage in something else. Just parents starting, or adults around them, teachers too. I mean, you do have to model appropriate use and knowing when to take a break or how to take a break, because just like you were mentioning, Andy, if you tell someone to get off video games or It's time to just put your phone away. Expect some sort of pushback or challenge because you are taking someone out of something that they are enjoying or are locked in on. And so a couple of different things. So number one, modeling first and foremost, but you can set some timers or something to show, okay, your use is going to end at this time, and everyone's going to shut it off, and we're going to go play a game together, or we're going to engage, take a walk together, engage in something that replaces that dopamine hit, that gives you some other type of energy or something to look forward to. And then you can use different things, and this isn't just for screens, but that 5 sense rule. So when you turn it off, start thinking about, okay, name something that you see, name something that you smell, name something you can touch, you can feel, and just start getting yourself out of screen mode and back into the world around you and engaging in that. But it does, and there's a couple of different things that might work, and not everything works the same for every child or adult even. But again, modeling and then finding that thing that can help you transition. I was just talking to someone else who they used dimes. And so dimes were the 10 minutes of time, 10 minutes passing by that they were on a screen. So every 10 minutes they had to move a dime out of a cup, but they had a finite number of dimes. And so you could choose how you use that time, but it was a visual look to see how you're using that time. And then when your time's up, your time's up. So there are a couple different things that you can use.
I'm going to jump in quick, Debbie, on something that you said. So at Screen Sanity, I love that everything that you mentioned is stuff that we live and breathe, but we actually have a resource called our video game decision tree. And it is an actual, like, how a family could really visualize or put into tangible form the steps and what leads to yes or what leads to no, and how to really learn those boundaries of screens with like screen usage with kids. So for example, if this outcome happened the first time, then you might not get as much time on the screens the next time, and just kind of processing how to understand those boundaries with kids and how they can like really make it very clear cut.
That's so smart. Thank you. I'm going to look that up. It did make me think of another thing real quick in the classroom. It can be really difficult for young learners to put a Chromebook away or the iPad or whatever that is. And so sometimes a successful redirect is to have Play-Doh or Legos or something that you can be creative with, that you can pivot. When we're closing this, you're picking this up and having a little creative moments until we transition to the next thing.
I absolutely love this. I actually could see this playing well when we're thinking about changing modes in our adult work. So imagine we're in a presentation, and we've all been there where everyone's looking on their phones and you're trying to speak and have a conversation, and just like this changing mode that Debbie's talking about, and tapping back into your surroundings and your environment. I love it. And Annie, I absolutely could have used your decision tree when I was younger, because my story is, Andy knows this, I was playing PlayStation. I forgot what game. It may have been Lara Croft. It was on Halloween. My parents were not home, and they arrived home and it was pitch black, and they saw that I was playing the video game and not out on Halloween. And my dad removed the PlayStation, never to be seen again. So that is how we handled it in our household. But on that, I'm going to jump to Kirk. Kirk, our master
It's so real,
facilitator,
Jess, you're not alone.
on the line here, part of this roundtable. And I really want to know, based on like what we've been talking about, like those moments when you're stuck in that consumption guilt, where you've had too much screen time, you're feeling guilty, maybe your girls have had too much, you're feeling guilty about it. Is from what you do with facilitating, is there a move that you can get your family out, that you can use to get your family out of this cycle?
Yeah, thanks. I think about this a lot with the kids where they are at 3 and 5. And I think there's two parts to it. One, we've already spent a good amount of time talking about the in the moment when you're feeling guilty or things aren't how you want them to be. And so the redirect, like we were just talking about, there's a lot of in the moment decisions that we can make. The second part of that, though, I think that you're talking about is how to break the cycle. And as a facilitator, that question is interesting to me. There's some ownership that comes with that of if there's a cycle to be broken and we can make moves to do that, why wouldn't we engage in that? And so as I've been thinking about it recently, and as we're trying to make decisions with my family, I think there were two things that came to mind. One, like two moves that I make as a facilitator that am trying to bring into this. One is curiosity before critique. And then the second one is everything as a prototype. So for the first one, curiosity before critique, I think to have an honest conversation, we need to be able to show up with curiosity. I think we lose a lot of credibility, especially maybe for those of us who have partners or dear friends where it's like, man, you do this wrong. Like your relationship with your phone is off. I don't like this. I don't like that. When we're jumping in with critique, I think we lose the ability to actually have a productive conversation. So if you have those thoughts, I think curiosity of, hey, I've noticed sometimes when I ask you about your phone or when I check in about this, or what we were just talking about the video games, I've noticed you get pretty activated. Can you help me understand what's going on for you as I approach this question or as I try to set a boundary? So having the curiosity to kind of get content out and be able to understand what are we feeling, what are we experiencing, either as adults or as kids. If you don't have a partner, I think asking a loved one, a dear friend, to be able to say, hey, I'm trying to break some cycles here. What are you noticing for me? What have you seen me do? How has it impacted you? So having curiosity both for yourself and for others. And then once you've had that and gotten some, what I would say, like content out, then really leaning into everything as a prototype. So try something out. Make a rule, try, and I think this was already said earlier too, is figure out something to try. If it's like, hey, phones are not allowed at the table or at bedtime, like was said earlier, that's an interesting one to try. I think there's all sorts of ones that you could attempt. Brene Brown talks about clear is kind. I think the clearer that the boundary can be for yourself or for the people in your home, the better. And so treating it like a prototype and saying, hey, let's give it a shot for a couple of weeks. Let's see how it goes. Let's kind of assess it, get feedback from each other and from ourselves, and being able to make decisions from that. So curiosity before critique, be honest about your experience, but also come at it with a curious and a kind way of approaching it. And then treat it like a prototype and say, let's try something out. Let's see how it works. And by having that sort of collaborative behavior, I think we can really start to see differences in behaviors. I see it when I work as a facilitator. And like I said, we're just now starting these conversations with our kids, my wife and I. And so trying to apply those same things. So maybe check in with me in a few months or a few years and see how they're going. But that's our intention right now and how we're trying to approach these exact questions.
I'm picking up some things here. You're talking about prototyping and curiosity, and I think you have some extensive design thinking work in your background. Is that right, Kirk? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. It reminded me of a friend of mine, Parker Gates, and and clear is kind is a wonderful truth, I think, or maxim at the very least. And Parker said something to me one time, which is also like, when you're in a stressful conversation, like a nice way to start or a good, effective way to start might be, the story I'm hearing or the story I'm telling myself. And what I'm picking up from you, Kirk, is really clear communication.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I love Parker, dear friend. So shout out to Parker.
Okay.
Yeah.
One thing I've heard on this topic, and I like to really focus on the word intent. So me, as Jess knows very well, social media historian is one of my favorite pastimes, but I like to think about intent when it comes to both screens and social media. So original intent, if we go to the OG MySpace, Facebook days, these platforms are designed very much for community. So like before we could like doom scroll, it was more about posting bulletins, status, top friends, a lot of weirdness to go around there as we kind of learned what social was at that time. However, when we look at current social media or any type of digital platform, it's a lot of inventory or people that may not actually be community. And we might be like watching them from afar, but they're not actually who we engage with. So a lot of what I talk about when we have our sessions, Jess and I, is like, what is the intent of what you're doing as a marketer, or what is the intent you're trying to do as a user? Who are you trying to reach? Because there's going to be a lot of people that see your content that you're not trying to reach. And I think as we loop this into kids, they're probably seeing people and things that are outside of their community. And it's extremely hard for us to really regulate. So now I want to really take this to in the classroom. Elizabeth, bringing you in here. Tell us about a classroom to home routine that can improve both outcomes and not ban the devices, but would you adopt this differently at different ages? So is there a way that we start to almost finesse the usage as a child starts to age up and probably becomes more and more comfortable with these platforms?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think that I kind of think about this with two ideas. And the first is in a classroom, it's really nice to have visual cues, and that applies to home life as well. So visual cues, and something that has come up already several times, which is just the idea of togetherness and using technology together to have a shared experience and the value that comes from that. So in my classroom, one thing I always had was a piece of paper that was green on one side and red on the other, just to indicate to students when it was okay to have phones out and when it was not okay. And we also used a lot of timers, which Debbie mentioned is a really nice cue. Could be like built into the phone itself, or an external cue that the time is up and it's time to transition to something else. One thing my husband and I are exploring is hanging up our phones. We have like anchors on the wall. And so that Annie did sort of talk about, physical spaces and keeping phones away. But my daughter is only 2, and she's already seeing that we're doing that at home, putting our phones up during family time, meal time. And I think that's been helpful for us personally, but also as a family. And I think that if my daughter was older, we would do the same thing with her phone. Just this is where it goes. And, to get to the idea of togetherness, like just that it is meant, as Andy just mentioned, to bring us closer together. And if I were in a school and kids did have phones, I'd much rather see them laughing at a video together, or, enjoying something together, as opposed to this like solitary texting by yourself, or playing a video game by yourself or with strangers on the internet. So not all experiences are created equal. And I think that watching a family movie together or playing games together, video games together, that has so much more value than doing those things on your own. And that togetherness can also just be a nice transition, like Debbie mentioned, just bringing them back to the real world. And Dr. Becky Kennedy talks a little bit about that, just like when the timer goes off, where you have that visual cue that the time is up, that you kind of sidle up to your kid and spend a couple minutes enjoying it together, asking questions about what it is they're looking at, what it's maybe designed to do, or even just, tell me about this thing, and like come into their world a little bit, but then gently pull them out of it and say, okay, it's time to move on. And I think that can work at home and in the classroom as well.
Well, Elizabeth, that is a fantastic point, and I think it perfectly segues to Angelique, because you're now talking about some positive usage or positive social media usage with your family or with your loved ones or with other individuals. And Angelique, I'm very curious from the therapy standpoint. So now going into the therapy room, when you're working with an individual, tell us more about like when you can spot when the technology is actually benefiting the person that you're working with, and when it's harming them. And then like when you spot both of those implications, is there like a low lift intervention for the harm that you recommend the person test?
Well, one thing I've really appreciated from this conversation so far is that we're not villainizing technology. I think it's really easy to do that because if you look at the research, there's a lot of correlation between screen time and negative mental health outcomes. And that's been in the news more and more lately. But I don't think that it has to be a bad thing. You know, if we're looking at signs of harm for a child, maybe we would be looking at things like exhaustion if they're staying up late at night on their phones. We might be seeing them withdraw. We might see them showing signs of dysregulation or agitation when they're separated from their devices. And we might be seeing them give up other things that used to be really valuable to them. So I think uh, so I think that the other side then would be, you know, where are those instances where technology is bringing people together, especially if we're looking at small communities. Sometimes children might feel very marginalized and they can find their communities online in a way that they never could have before in a smaller community. So I do think that, you know, if you see a child feeling more connected, more like themselves, if you see them using technology to explore their interests, to enhance their interests, um, that these can be really positive things. So as far as low lift interventions, I think we've kind of touched on a lot of them. So the American Association of Pediatrics suggests the 5 Cs. So the first C is about the child themselves. You know, who is your child? What are they interested in? What are they doing online? And is this content that they're engaging in, is it enhancing their life? Is it helping them engage in their hobbies and connect with their friends, or not? So in this instance, we're looking more at content rather than just a simple number of hours that they're engaging with media. So next C, content. What are they doing? What sort of media are they taking in? A lot of you today have been talking about sort of moving up alongside your kids and asking them these questions, and you know, just kind of gauging whether or not the tech they're utilizing is appropriate for them. Um, and then the third C is calm. So are these children using the internet or tech to escape from negative emotions? Do they have the skills that they need in order to regulate themselves? Do they have the skills to get themselves to bed at night? And a lot of you have been talking about helping children transition away from their devices back into the home, and talking about how to self-regulate. So that's a big thing too. You know, making sure that your children have the skills that they need to regulate themselves, so they don't necessarily need to go to tech to do it for them. Question number 4 is the fourth C is the crowding out. And that's that first question that we talked about as far as, you know, what are they giving up in order to engage with this technology? And so that can also start a really important conversation at home about, you know, what tech is for, what it's not for, how we prioritize what's valuable to us, and making sure that our tech usage reflects that. And then last but not least is just this general, you know, idea of communication, just making sure that you're being really curious. I love that word that you used earlier, Kirk, being super curious and not judging, and just really keeping those lines of communication open, because the research would also say that kids who have strong relationships with their parents are going to be much less negatively impacted by social media and by their technology use.
Angelique, I really like the idea of almost like you're framing up for a child. Is it like stealing, you know, something that you're doing? So like for me, for instance, like a background for me is like community management. Like I used to read through hundreds, if not thousands of comments a day, and some of them can be pretty intense. And, you know, there were times where I was kind of like, wow, like I can't handle this after work. I was like, imagine if this is what I did all night and I didn't get paid for it. So you like think about like what we're seeing on the internet and how harsh this can get. But it's also a way that I try to frame up my day. Actually, something I put a limitation on too is I started to feel like too much TikTok was affecting how I felt throughout the workday. So new rule I have for myself: I don't use TikTok during the workday, and I time myself out at like 45 minutes at night, if that at this point. But this will kind of lead us into how we want to round this out. Bringing you in here, Steve, bringing the mental health, the marketing side, blending it together. And I think for our marketers out there listening, this is kind of the question I think starts to like round it. And sometimes as marketers, we ask ourselves, are we doing ethically what we think is right for our children? So Steve, big question here we're going to end here with is, what is a change that you wish brands, platforms would adopt tomorrow to reduce the anxiety, maybe around what we're putting on the screens, but also without squashing the growth and marketers' impact that we're bringing to the table?
Ooh, that is a big question, and I'm not a mental health clinician, and I'm a decent marketer. I'm good at running events. So I've run the mental health marketing conference for 7 years, and 3 or 4 years ago, I booked a great panel on youth mental health, and this topic really came up. And there was a really fabulous expert from one of the major sort of platforms, and she and I were talking behind in the green room ahead of time, and I said, hey, my daughter's growing up, like, what's your strategy for like devices? And my daughter was 4 or 5 at the time, so we were still kind of grappling with our strategy. And this person said, oh, we don't have devices at the dinner table at all. Like we hang them up. So I think Angelique or Elizabeth, one of you said, hang it up on the wall like your keys. I love that idea. This is a big question. I would say I love the direction that things are going in terms of youth ratings. I think that's really important. What we've seen on Instagram and other platforms where it was just simply the Wild West for a while, and it was all available. So I think the more we can go that direction with the advertising, like I said earlier, is as it can be, wildly impactful to certain kids. My daughter has a palate for spicy foods that, like, if I have a 2, she has a 7 in terms of how much it burns her. And so I would say, if you've seen one child, you've seen one child. And we see this mistake get made all the time. Like, I was the youngest of 4. And my parents would say, man, you all are so different. And it's like, yes, the odds of us coming out the same are infinitesimally small. So, coming alongside, like Rob said, and others, and being in tune with your child is going to be the very best thing that we can do. We even see this with, let's say divorced parents, like those kids, overwhelmingly grow up to be really healthy adults if the parents stay involved. That's the one decision factor, and stable home and living and sort of those fundamentals. But from a marketing standpoint, I would say be careful. Like, opt for conservative care, knowing that we don't know everything that we don't know about what we're dealing with. And so tech has this sort of battle cry of move fast and break things. And it's not worth it when it comes to the communities that we live in and the people that we are around. And sometimes, it's not like I can point fingers to people inside of tech. They're humans just like me. I can see myself doing the same sorts of things. So, Andy, you brought up a great point about, the things you post and who might see it. I mean, I'm surprised the people who come up to me and say, oh yeah, I read your stuff all the time. And it's like, well, you never like it, but it's wild that it could impact you. But at the end of the day, for me, this is not a new problem. It's a very old problem. There's and I'll just wrap with this, is like there's this 17th century philosopher, Blaise Pascal, and he said all of humanity's problems come from our inability to sit in a room alone. And loneliness is definitely not the goal here, but whether it's meditation or a certain diet that's better for us based on the inputs and the measurements that we see for ourselves and our children, being as finely tuned as we can to a life that is aware of what's going on, asking why. I really learned a lot from this panel today, and have more follow-on conversations after this with you, because I think that's where I land with it, is like, let's be as careful as we can about children, because we see, even ACEs, like adverse childhood experiences, you have 5 or 6 of those before you're 10, you are most likely going to live a lot less long. And there is resilience and things we can do to overcome that. Again, that's not a universal application, but when you run the big numbers, that's what we see on the mental health side. So, and I guess I would end there, is that kids are just so beautiful and so impressionable. So, find the right time as best we can to introduce it to them based on who they are as individuals.
Well, Jess, we have our homework to do as a follow-up from this. So I have my notepad where I took plenty of notes here, but Steve, I think just a great, closing take for us marketers to think about and how we wrap things around. Because Jess, whether you're a marketer or not, in this room talking today, this is the customer that's like speaking. And what do you always say, Jess? I'll let you say it. Who's always right?
The customer. Even though some people don't believe that, we're learning from some past guests, but yes, customer. They're just putting the focus on the customer instead of your brand and trying to be cool.
Definitely. Final thoughts, last words from the group, any takeaways you're leaving from today and you're going to implement tomorrow?
I mean, I have so many thoughts, and I don't know how much time I want to take, but I think the inquiry of what is of genuine value and goodness for the people that you're trying to reach and touch, and how does it impact them in such a way that they get off of their devices embodied in relationship with a non-virtualized space, is a difficult balance when your job is to keep people engaged in virtualized digital spaces. And for us to really take into consideration just the neurological safety of the context of where we're marketing even. But this intent that we can use attention capture to genuinely steer attention in more fruitful directions. Because we know that we can do crazy attention capture and we can shut down like the higher capacities of the human being such that the doom scroll goes and they're incredibly in a hypnagogic suggestive state. And what happens to people when they spend too much time in that space? Well, really any time that's facing a screen, certainly. But I just want to underscore the intent of being of service to the people that we're touching in ways that it's difficult. It's one thing if you're going old school, you like knock on the person's home and you come into their home to like sell them the vacuum cleaner. Like I remember that happening when I was a kid, and like the person's building a relationship and like genuinely wants to like, hey, we have these amazing vacuum cleaners, and is like in your living room gifting you something that they're really passionate about. And it's this embodied thing. And how we get to know each other through those embodied interactions, and via this digital space we don't, and it's like we're doing all these things and we get all these analytics back. But I just want to appreciate the intent to capture people, to interrupt them, to illumine, to educate, to bring them into what really matters, should be used at at full scale, like this crazy capacity to intersect attention and to go into a person's psyche and their emotional body and move them in ways that is genuinely pro-social for them is like, it's right there. We have all the apparatus, and I don't know if it's genuinely connected into this for the well-being as opposed to for the benefit of a few owners of the companies that are profiting. And that's like a tension that we got to live in, I think, as a collective. Like, what is that tension? So that would be one thing that I would offer. I'll hit pause on myself, as I often say, but I don't know if that kicks up anything for anybody else, but
I actually think it's actually a really good segue just for the next roundtable I'm proposing for us to do. And I don't know, I think I've mentioned to you to this, Jess, but a lot of it when we talk about companies and what they're putting out there, it also involves the communities that they're based in. So the next roundtable we're proposing is influencers roundtable or creators roundtable, where we're going to be asking some of these same questions. And it's like, how do you balance this when you're taking the video? And I think that it's an interesting answer, because something that I've found, Rob, when I've done community-based work, sometimes you end up getting lumped into places you don't think you're going to be lumped into. And it's like the internet almost starts deciding it for you. And it starts showing to people you didn't think you're going to be shown to Steve's point. So it's like, how is all that managed? It's going to be really abstract, because just as you know, and I'll kind of like I'll end and start to close up with this, is we're trying to create messages that are right for our communities that aren't right for everyone. But then if everybody's seeing it, like, what's the play there? And that's where I think it gets murky when it comes to you.
Yeah. I would say that you all could be in the next roundtable as creators. I appreciate everything that you have shared, your perspectives. I'm so grateful and thankful. And it just makes me think that there is no right answer. So like the stress that I put on myself thinking that I have to be doing one thing versus the other, that's been eliminated. So thank you for that. And then also too, it does affect all of us. It's not just kids, but I feel I now have hope just based on what you're all sharing and how you're guiding your loved ones through this environment. I now see that there's some really incredible people out there that are going to help our youth get to their next stage and their level of growth and still maintain that community. So I am very happy, and I'm walking away feeling so much better. Yes.
And as we wrap up today, this is the part of the show where we usually say connect with our guests, but we had several today. So be sure, again, please look at the description titles of these of Spotify, Apple, LinkedIn, YouTube, wherever you're viewing this. We will have that in the description, how you can connect. But otherwise, a thank you to everyone today for joining us in a beta test, if you will, of a new episode. We captured 54 minutes of screen time and what I would say impactful screen time. So huge thank you. And to our listeners, we will see everybody soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.